Any final thing? Any weird bets we like? Anything
There's a couple more
funky?
guys I want to talk about. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I was gonna say, I
I'm
mean,
getting hungry,
we
man. Like,
we literally ran through the
No,
whole
I'm done.
field.
I'm done. I promise. I'm done.
Welcome to Center Cup. I'm Kyle Muserino, joined as always by Wait. Let me restart that. Hello, friends, and welcome to
Oh,
Center
there we go.
Cup. I'm
What a
Kyle
pump fake.
Muserino, joined as always by Will Leary and Nick Newmeyer. And not only is it preview day, it's Masters preview day. There is so much to get to in this episode. So many guys we like, course fit, what makes the beauty of Augusta National and everything that comes with it. So, Will, why don't you take the wheel? Where do you want to start here? We got a lot to get to.
Yeah, we do, and I'm gonna try not to be too long-winded in this because I could talk for literally just hours straight about this. But I guess I just want to start with the course. I mean, everybody knows. I think everybody who's listening to a golf podcast knows about Augusta National, knows about Amen Corner. They don't need me telling them the swirling winds above 12 green, the approach shot into 11 with water left, all that stuff. We all see that every year. We hear a lot about that every year. I want to talk a little bit more in generalities about this course, about what makes it like so fascinating. And I think a lot of it is just that there was some interesting. I think it's encapsulated well by the third hole, and there was an interesting comment that a question to Matt Fitzpatrick that was asked today in one of the interviews today, being Tuesday when we are recording this in one of the live interviews that they had going on YouTube. And the question was, where on the course is there the most debate between players about what the proper approach is. And he kind of commented on three specifically and how, three is that short par four where it's pretty straight away. The green complex is raised a little bit. So, if you're just short, you kind of have trouble like trying to bump and run something up the hill, or you can like loft it up and try to nip it depending on how firm and fast the greens are running. Um, and some players, like, last year we saw Bryson lay up despite his power. He laid up, Rory went for the green. Randomly, I was just watching because I think Nick, I was when we were doing our podcast on past champions and learning about how ridiculous 2003 was. I was like kind of just in the background, had that broadcast on. I saw Tiger go for it, blew it 50 yards right into the trees there. But I think what makes Augusta so fascinating is those like little decisions that can be so penal or so like rewarding depending on what you do. And also, I mean, what's always talked about with Augusta is that it really does manage to bring out the best golfer, like the person who is the like playing the best. That's why you always get these, why you get Rory last year, Scotty twice in the last 4 years, John Rahm. The greats perform really well at Augusta, and I think a lot of the reason for that is it requires it requires a good balance. I mean, we know putting isn't always like the biggest thing. I mean, but at the same time understanding the subtleties of the greens and like the experience that comes with which comes with experience is like so important. Like you won't see, I think in the last 5 years, like none of the winners were high up on the strokes gained putting ranks. But that doesn't mean you really do have to have some familiarity with like the undulations here. It's super subtle. It's really weird. That's part of why I think it's the last person to win in the first time playing the Masters was Fuzzy Zeller in 1979. I think we mentioned that maybe on Monday's pod or maybe that was offline. I'm not quite sure, but there's a lot of really like small little things that make Augusta great. And I think, again, I can go on and on the lies that you get, which like you'll be in the fairway and the ball's a foot and a half above your feet, trying to hit a long iron into 10 or an approach shot into 13. The angles that you have to play and the way you have to play is super unique. Yeah, before I get into, course fit, I'll stop my I feel like I'm like that emoji with like my eyes are big hearts, like they're like bulging out of my head, like "Ooh," like in a cartoon where I'm just like so in love with this place. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's a fascinating challenge, and like it asks a lot more than the average golf course, which is why it lends itself to such good winners and such good tournaments.
yeah, you are not alone. This is probably the most excited I've ever been to record an episode. I am so happy this week. But I think what really, just to kind of build on what you're saying, is the greens, I think, are the biggest factor of this week. I think I saw a chart today that talked about the landing zones on the
Hmm.
green. And it's like you have like maybe 5 feet of a zone. And then if you land it just like 1 foot to the left or 1 foot to the right, it is rolling to a completely different spot. They're just very complicated, very and by the sound of it, it sounds like it's going to be very like firm and hard
It's a
greens.
hard and
And
fast
so
Masters this year.
it sounds like this might be a bit of a higher scoring Masters, but
Hmm.
I'm very just I think the greens is obviously where, I think distance is sometimes rewarded and sometimes it's not. I think I guess I will probably get into this later with storylines, but I think the biggest one that I could think of was was it 2021 was the par 68 Bryson thing? Wait, was that
I think
2021
was it
or
21 or
two?
two? It might have been 22. I don't remember off the top of my head. I can tell you in a second,
So
but keep going.
for anybody that doesn't know what I'm talking about, Bryson DeChambeau, when he was on his 7 protein shakes, 5 fillets every day, like when he was on his like massive bulking phase, he had mentioned that because of his distance off the tee, instead of playing at a par 72, Augusta was actually going to be playing a par 68 for him and him only. And it could not have blown up more catastrophically for him. I think he ended up missing the cut. And I think he was paired with, I think his average carry was well in the 300s. And he was paired with Bernard Langer, who was hitting it about maybe 220 off the tee. And long story short, Bernard Langer made the cut and Bryson didn't. Like there is this golf course giveth and this golf course taketh away. And just there's so much variability that, you could be one of the best players on paper. Like I think you look at, we'll definitely get into this one later, but you look at how before Rory McIlroy won his first Masters last year, you look at every single year, I think the last 5 years, he was the betting favorite. He's one of the best golfers on paper. And yet it just catastrophically fell apart. So this is a course where it really doesn't matter how you're swinging it. It really doesn't matter where your game is trending. It's just what happens in those 4 days is truly up to the course, which is to me different than almost any other tournament.
Yeah. I think just to add on to what you were saying about the greens quickly, like I think I wrote down somewhere in here. I have too many notes to really pick it out right now, but it's like it's awesome to see a course where you can miss, like you said, Nick, like they're on like the pins are on little shelves, and if you miss by the smallest margin, you might be in the totally wrong place. And it's crazy. It's always so fun to see guys like you might hit the green and be like way more screwed with that putt than you would be if you had missed left of the green in this little runoff area where you actually have a decent chip. Like just knowing these specific things about where you can and can't miss is like so emphasized at Augusta, which obviously
Right.
is part of the experience that we were talking about.
Now, Nick, you mentioned it doesn't matter how you're playing necessarily coming into Augusta, but Ron Close does a awesome job. He had this whole little spreadsheet of 2026 Masters winner trends. So one of the tidbits he has is 16 of the last 16 winners had finished 35th or better in their previous start before the Masters, and 15 of the last 16 had at least one top eight finish in the seven events before the Masters. What do you think about that?
Well, I definitely think that, there is some like I'm not gonna go out and say it truly doesn't matter how you're playing because like Fred Couples is not winning the Masters.
Hey,
Not to pull a will with Nico
that was my
Echeverria,
official
but
pick, man. That was my official
it's
pick.
this course is not going to just magically make someone better. Obviously, there needs to be some semblance of form heading into the week. And so I think it's definitely interesting just seeing where those categories actually end up. And so I think a lot of it tends to be strokes gained around the green approach. It's very much about iron shots. I think is
Yeah,
the some of the best long iron players are typically some of the best players on this course year after year.
yeah. It's a second shot course for sure. I think one thing that was interesting to me when I was looking into like the strokes gain stuff and whatever on data golf is like we know that it's an iron and approach play course, right? But it was I was looking at it and I think yeah, so none of the last five Masters champions have been better than 20th in their strokes gained putting, but they've all been all five champions have been in the top 15 in both strokes gained approach and around the green. Because it's very much like kind of what we were talking about. Like I feel like that really encapsulates what we're talking about, right? Where it's like your approach play needs to be really strong, and then also if you miss, you need to be able to have that around the green play to correct that miss, to be able to like make up for that, to supplement the any error you make in your approach play. Approach play needs to be supplemented by your around the green play, but neither can be off. Like you can't wholly rely on getting up and down from around greens because you just won't, especially when it's firm and fast the way it'll play this year. And you can't wholly rely on your approach play giving you good opportunities because, like you said, Nick, the margins are so thin that even the best in the world, you're not going to have a perfect, you're just not going to hit that approach shot enough times to be able to only rely on approach. You really need to find a way to balance the two of them, which is kind of like that's really the only trend if you wanted to. I mean, like you said, Nick, like distance is rewarded, but distance is so complicated to me because it's like distance doesn't seem to be rewarded, but also if you hit the ball long and far and straight, I mean, you're going to be in better position than guys who don't, right? But specifically in terms of approach, like in terms of it being a second shot course, which is where you really make your money here, you do need to have some sort of balance between what you're able to do on and around the greens, as well as your approach. You can't rely on one versus the other.
And I do think as well that, this for the next 40 minutes is probably just going to be us massively overthinking just about
Oh,
everything.
of
But
course.
this is really not like, when you like Kyle, when you bring up those stats like that, to me, like some of them I feel like tend to be a bit more valuable than the most. And others kind of sound like, 16 of the last 16 or masters champions started their week on Thursday. Like,
Yeah.
there's some where it's just like, okay, we're kind of pulling straws here. I do think that, going back to Brooks Koepka, I think this was either 2021 or 2022, the quote when they asked him about who he feels he needs to beat, who he feels threatened by or anything like that. I think what he said is out of the whole field, you're gonna have like 70 people that are just not gonna play well. And then 30 of them are going to play well. And then when it comes down to it, uh, 15 of them aren't going to play well when the situation calls for it, and then some are gonna rise to the occasion, some aren't. And then he probably said it a lot better. I definitely encourage you to go and look at that quote. But when he, in his own like Brooks Koepka math, he determined that out of everybody in the field, there were only maybe like six guys that could, probably even less, that could theoretically beat him. And of those guys, maybe two of them were actually going to play well, if that makes sense. And so I think that there's, long story short, there is, when it comes to looking at these stats, we can sit here and come up with hypotheticals every day. But at the end of the day, I feel like there are a few people that we know are definitely not going to win the Masters, and
Yeah.
there is definitely a short list of people that we think can win as well.
Yeah. I think what was like to I don't know. What was so weird about looking at like, the odds on whatever sports book you want to use, looking at who's favorited and all those things. This year simultaneously feels so open and so not open because like conceptually I'm like Scotty, I don't feel that good about like coming into this. Like obviously one of the best players in the world. John Rahm and Bryson are second and third in odds, and it's like, well, I haven't really seen them play. I know Bryson's winning, but Bryson's winning on live. I know John Rahm's winning, but John Rahm's winning on live. I don't really know what to do with that. And you keep going down the list, and for each guy, it's like, well, Cam Young, but like we haven't really seen him do it at the Masters, and like he's coming off of like how I know Rory won the Players and then the Masters last year. I think Scotty did the same thing in 2022. Like, is Cam Young going to really make that three in a row? Like all this stuff, it simultaneously feels like to me like almost anyone can win. But then in my head, I'm like, well, it's the Masters. Not anyone can win. Like we're not going to get like it's hard to draw that line this year, right? I feel like in prior years, you can look at the top 10 and be like, okay, you got Rory, Scotty playing at the top of their games. You got Bryson, if you want, you got John Rahm. You got guys like Colin, you got guys like Ludwig who always play well at the Masters, who are really really talented, have really good approach play. But there's a pretty harsh cutoff around like the eighth or ninth guy where you're like, okay, these guys now we're getting into the probably not going to win territory, right? I feel like that's the
Right.
typical Augusta year. This year, I'm looking at the odds, right? You can get down to like Min Woo Lee at 3,400. I'm like, can I see it? Yes. Do I think it's going to happen? No. But like, also, who else is going to win? I don't know. Like this year feels simultaneously super open, but also I have no concept of where to draw that line and be like, okay, now we're getting to the range of people who can't win, you know, because it
Right.
just feels so bizarre to me.
And I think just the fact that, you sort of alluded to this, but just the fact that Scotty Scheffler is not at the top of his game, it almost feels like the throne has been vacated. And there are so many people just kind of like squabbling and trying to get to the top. And so many people are capable of doing it. And so like morals, there is no clear favorite this week. And I think that
Yeah.
is amazing.
So
Speaking of, yeah, Kyle, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, I think the talk of the year so far has been just how wide open it's been and just how unpredictable it's been week to week. How much do you guys think the players feel that themselves? And coming into a week like this week, does that give guys more hope than maybe they would have had last year or 2 years ago, knowing, like Scotty's a juggernaut or, Rory's
Mm.
coming in great form or whatever. Do you guys think that is, we talk about it in the media, we talk
Yeah.
about it as fans. Do the players, you
I
think they
think
hear that chatter?
I think if you asked them, like if we were in a room, with mics around and asked a player that, they'd say, "Oh no, like I come and I try to just do my job. Like, look, I'm gonna every tournament I'm gonna put my best foot forward and wherever the chips fall, they fall." But I have to imagine that there's some understanding, or they have some like you know that's got to be in the back of their mind that like not to repeat myself, but like last year when you have Rory and Scotty at the top of their games, they're playing like the best golf they've played in years. Like, well, Scotty has been doing this for 4 years now, but Rory playing like some of the best golf he's played in years. It's got to, I have to imagine that you're coming in being like, okay, like there's levels to this stuff, and they're at the top of their game. They're at a different level than I can really feasibly convince myself I can play this week. But yeah, I mean, I think this year you have to be coming in with a little bit more hope, a little bit more opportunity. Maybe not if you're, you know, one of those guys that's super far down the list. But if you're, somebody that's 20th, the Bobby McIntyres of the world, like I gotta think he's coming in here with a good amount of confidence, being like, hey, I have just as much a shot. Like I proved it last week that when I'm on my game and the weather's not absolutely insane, I can put together one of the best approach play rounds we've seen in recent like that I personally remember seeing with my own eyes in recent years. So it's like I mean, guys like that, I feel like have to have a little bit, maybe some inkling of hope. But again, like if you actually asked them that and asked them to say that on record, they would absolutely not do it. But
Right. I think like so when we were in Phoenix at Chris Goddard's press conference, someone asked him like when Scotty shoots like a two over on Thursday, does that sort of get into your head? Does that almost add more pressure to be like, okay, the the boot has kind of been taken off, like or like where am I going with this analogy? Like Scotty's not playing well, like take
the
advantage of
boot,
it. Is
Yeah.
that
take the boot off. Yeah.
but yeah, I'm not even. Yeah, I don't even know where I was going with that. But if you, so they asked him like, I didn't really like the question. If I'm being honest, I didn't think it was really the time or place to ask that question. But what he had said was that at the end of the day, like especially when it's someone of that caliber, um, you notice it. You 100% see. But I think his exact words were, "He's the best player in the world right now. What he did today, I'm playing behind him again, so I could hear it all day. There's no pressure though. If he wins a golf tournament, you're not surprised. But to take advantage, I guess to your point, is nice. But any week, you're just trying to beat everybody in the field. So I think
Yeah.
that's sort of what you're going to get from them. I really don't think they're looking at. I don't think they're looking at like who is playing. Like, oh wait, if I'm here and this person's here, then they have a chance to get me more than this person. I really don't think they're thinking it that much. I think at the end of the day, they just want to try to play the best golf they can, and just hopefully that will be enough to beat whoever they're not scared of, but at least have their eye on.
Definitely. I mean, I think it's something that maybe, every golfer probably has the same mindset when they start the round. It's all about them. And maybe as they, evolve throughout the round or over the week, maybe that mindset shifts a little bit as you kind of see what's gone on. But I tend to generally agree with what both you guys said. Okay, so do we want to talk a little bit about who some of these guys might be that fit the mold of a good combo of an elite approach and around the green, and then kind of talk about some of these previous winners?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
yeah, yeah. I do want to preface it though, because I think, well, actually, I want to preface it with a question almost, because I'm curious, before I list off a bunch of names that are really good at around the green and approach, what do you guys think? I have to, like, in my head, Augusta playing really firm and fast makes the emphasis a little bit more on around the green, theoretically, just because I think it's so much harder to hold approach shots that you're gonna miss more. Um, Maybe that's not the right way to think about it, but I'm curious what, like, the difference between Augusta playing soft and or not soft, it's never playing soft, less firm, uh compared to like a hard and fast year like this. Like, where does that kind of, how does that shift what you're looking for in these kind of parameters?
Well, I think at the end of the day, when it's playing that more firm, I think there's going to be a lot more emphasis on putting. I think that's
Hmm.
definitely, those greens are a beast anyways. And if they're playing harder and firmer, they're definitely going to be a lot faster, which brings an entirely new element into play. And so I feel like I would definitely be more mindful of. Actually, no. Now that I'm kind of thinking of this myself, I feel like you're seeing the full wheels turning right now. I
That's
think
good.
I
Yeah, I
would
did
be
not
more
prep you guys for this
inclined
position.
I would be more inclined to look at more approach and putting over around the green because I feel like if your approach play is dialed, you're not really going. I think the best way to avoid hitting a bad shot is to just take it out of the bat. Like, don't even make that shot a possibility in the first place. And so if you're hitting greens, if you're hitting good shots and you can rely more on your putter than the wedge, I think that's probably going to be more valuable than just having like epic short game.
Yeah, I think where my mind went is just that it's so, when it's so hard, it's like when it's firm, I mean, the margins become even thinner, right? You get
Right.
more roll. Like, if you miss on the wrong side, you're going to miss bigger. Just because the ball's going to hit and roll farther, you might miss on the wrong side of the green, or it might roll off the green. There's so many collection areas at Augusta. There's so many places where your ball can settle, that you kind of. I agree that, like, yes, ideally you just take that shot out of the bag and don't even introduce that risk. But on a hard and fast Augusta green, I just don't think that that's a, like, I'd love to take that shot away, but I think you have to hit an approach shot, right? And the margins become so razor thin that it becomes even harder to hold greens and makes you do. But then again, that also places more of an emphasis on approach. I guess it just makes it all around harder, maybe.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. I think that I don't know. There's definitely room for both. I think that especially if you have epic short game and epic putting around, you really know those greens. I'm thinking of one person in particular that really kind of gets you and puts you in a really good position for the tournament as well. And so I think this is also where I feel like experience is going to factor in. That's where like a Min Woo Lee is not going to be that much on my radar, even though he has really good short game. He's Dr. Chapinski. Like, I know that he's someone that is probably capable of doing that, but I would tend to lean more towards someone with more experience on those greens, someone that's maybe played a harder and firmer Masters because of the variability of those greens. I think that doesn't give as much to. It kind of goes back to what we were saying before of like there are a few people that we think can actually win this based off of a mix of course history and overall play.
Yeah. The Minwoo Lee comment. I know you were using him as an example. This is his fifth Masters somehow. Don't know how that's possible. Fifth
Really?
straight.
Wow.
He
Okay.
played every year since 2022. Sorry, Kyle. I cut you off a little bit. I just wanted to give my boy a little bit of grace here.
My
No, I was
apologies
just
to Minwoo Lee.
I I was just thinking, a lot of the talk about this week so far has been how good the weather is. And,
Mhm.
Scotty was quoted even saying, this is the best forecast I think we've had since I started playing here. I think I heard commentary about maybe 2021 was the last time they hadn't had really any rain in the weeks leading up. And you look at that 2021 leaderboard where Hideki won, and as we know, he kind of fits the mold of just a great iron player. Xander is up there, Spieth was up there
Mhm.
as well, John Rahm, Justin Rose, just a lot of the guys you kind of associate with great iron play. So I mean, you just have to think that's going to play such a big factor this week with how, kind of rare it is to get the course in this condition.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I
I,
mean,
I I definitely agree. I think that obviously, like the forecast looks beautiful. Can I just say, like, it's going to be warm, it's going to be sunny, it's going to be a bit breezy on Thursday, and the morning wave is probably going to get a bit caught up in just sort of the cool weather and wind, but it's gonna warm up the rest of the way. The no rain is interesting. I definitely think that that is usually what sort of softens the course a little bit. And without that, I feel like that's definitely going to be a bit of an equalizer. I think out of all the guys you mentioned that are on the leaderboard, that were on the 2021 leaderboard, I could feasibly see all of them being in contention this year, with maybe the exception being Xander. I'm a bit hesitant on him right now, but
really interesting.
Interesting.
yeah, because I just feel like it's been a really weird year for him, where I feel like he has been a bit on the come up recently, but that was just a really weird start to the season, and it was just kind of like threw me off a little bit.
Yeah. I was sorry. I was trying to find the. I couldn't remember which Masters I was thinking of. I was thinking of 2024 when it was actually pretty hard and fast, but it was hard and fast in the first round. It came out really windy that first day, and Bryson shot a 7 under 65 to take the lead, and then promptly imploded with like 73, 75, 73 because the wind died, and I think it softened up a good bit. So it asks totally different questions depending on the weather we get. So if it is fairly still because obviously breeze can play a huge factor. If it is fairly still, yeah, I'm curious, but I guess we can list up again. I think also to before I list off the around the green and approach names, which I think we talked about 5 or 10 minutes ago at this point. Um, it's also important to like mention that like it's the Masters. It's very different. Like there's a like I'll spoil one name. Nick Taylor is quite good at around the greens and approach. It being the Masters makes me kind of throw that out the window a little bit. He does not have good experience at the Masters. He has always been pretty good in those aspects of his game. So this is kind of person to person before you just like take each name that I read off here as like they're going to play really well because they have these. Like that has not historically been the case, but a lot of the names do play well here, and that's Hideki Matsuyama. It's one of the best in around the greens and approach. He's probably the most like the profile is the highest on both of those two combined. There's Scotty Scheffler, Northwestern alum, go Cats, Matt Fitzpatrick, who had some really interesting comments this morning in his interview that I'm excited to get to when we talk about him inevitably. Tommy Fleetwood, who I kind of had forgotten was here. That's my own blind spot. I like Tommy Fleetwood a lot, but he just hasn't really been front of mind. Ever since I think that first week or so when he came back from the DP World Tour in January, we were kind of talking about him a good bit. I feel like we haven't talked about him since then, to be honest. Um, like I said, Nick Taylor, Victor Hovland. I'm really curious to see what version of Victor Hovland shows up.
Right.
Ludwig Oberg, John Rahm. To circle back quickly on what I think I meant to say this earlier actually, and it just talking about Victor Hovland reminded me a little bit. I think the who is going to show up question is like the most uniform question I can think of for this Masters. Like, what version of Scotty are we going to get? What version of Rory are we going to get? What version of Colin Morikawa post back injury are we going to get? Are we going to get a Ludwig that is robotic? Are we going to get him lose? Like, what version of Ludwig are we going to get? Are we going to get the iron play savant Victor Hovland, or are we going to get pool floaties on the driving range Victor Hovland? Like, there's so many people that I feel like I think that's what made picking so hard for me. And even John Rahm and Bryson DeChambeau, it's like, what am I going to get from these guys who I haven't seen perform in 2026 on a PGA tour on a major championship scale? Like it's so much that's so much of the trouble I had picking this is just like, man, so many of these guys, like Scotty could show up and just absolutely light the world on fire, or he could show up and look like he's going to be T20 again. Like there's so many different people that I feel like fall into that category of like I really don't know which version is going to show up, and
Right.
that changes totally my view. Like I feel like I'll know Thursday evening. I'll have such a better idea of who I think is going to win this room, obviously. But like, you know what I mean? Like just seeing what version of them shows up on Thursday is going to be so important.
Yeah, I think like to me, the first person, like, do we want to start listing off names, or do you have more?
Yeah, we've been talking for a long time. I think we can start getting to names. I will say we're gonna do a full like picks sequence here, with our official picks, a couple different categories that we're gonna run through. So there's like, obviously like I think I have listed like 25 different names at different odds levels or whatever that we can get to, and we should talk about our favorites for sure right now. I want to save some of that. Well, we should go through our picks because we'll inevitably talk about a lot of those guys eventually, right? But I do
Yeah.
want to hear what you were going to say, Nick, and we should talk about a couple guys before we get into the picks.
Well, I don't want to actually, you know what? I'm gonna hold off on this because now I see that this is your prove me wrong guy, and I don't want to steal your thunder.
Oh, okay. Well, we can tag team it right now. Why don't we just tag team it? You kick me off, and I'll pick up wherever you leave off.
You said it last night when we were talking, but yeah, I think your exact words were Rory McIlroy has not entered your head once this week.
He hasn't. I forgot. It's similar to Tommy Fleetwood. Not even a little bit.
That's just
Yeah.
crazy.
No, and it
Yeah.
really, I feel like just the way this is setting up and like clip it, come back, like I will take the heat for this. This is setting up for the most obvious missed cut of all time.
Oh, really? I thought you were going to go
Ooh,
the
I
other way.
like
I thought you were
that.
going to say the most obvious defending the title.
Oh, there's
No. Yeah, clip it. I'll be ready to defend it come
Okay.
Monday. But to me, I just look at historically how Rory has done. Like statistically, he is never good when he's reached the top. He's always good when he's fighting something. So when he was fighting Liv, when he was fighting for the FedEx Cup playoffs, and pushing against Scotty Scheffler, when he was pushing to win the Masters. So when he has that edge, when he has that motivation, there's nobody in this world that is beating him. But when he doesn't, it's just not there. And I feel like his sort of personality this week has just kind of been like, he's showing he's wearing his green jacket everywhere. He's got the Augusta hat. Like
It feels like
he
some
really
jealousy is coming out.
it's just a tiny bit. But it really sounds like it really looks like he's sort of relishing a lot in last year, which I mean, of course, you should. Like you have the champions dinner, you are still very much the defending champion of the event. But I don't know. I feel like Rory in his game, he tends to get very complacent. And whenever he falls into one of those, it's like obviously, there's the issue with his back at the players. And so like that's kind of derailed his season a little bit. But or was it the Genesis? But when it comes to when Rory gets into one of those complacent moods, when he can kind of like rest on his laurels a little bit, that's when he starts falling back to the pack. And so I personally see him in one of those mental states this week, and I'm not very high on him whatsoever.
Yeah, for the record, I agree with you. Generally, I kind of I think the I'm not willing to stand on your missing a cut take, but I like where your head's at. I mean, I think the reason I have him as my prove me wrong guy is kind of exactly what you just said. Like I just haven't thought about him, and I think this was a storyline going into the PGA Championship last year, obviously after Augusta. After he won Augusta, the storyline going into the PGA Championship is like, what can we expect from a guy who has reached the mountaintop and has done exactly what he was hoping to do, and doesn't really need like he's not being pushed by anything in particular. So um, yeah, I think it's hard. This is a totally new year, right? And he did have some good major performances towards the end of last year. I think he was T7 at the Open Championship, something like that. Um, but yeah, it'll be interesting because I think on one hand, when I said I was expecting you to say like, oh, when I was expecting you to say like, oh, this is gonna be the most obvious title defense of all time, that's I think just because I feel like we're leaning towards one of the extremes with this result. Like it's hard for me like and you went the other extreme, missed the cut, and I can see both, but um yeah, I have trouble believing that. And I think Kyle, you're typing something out, and I'm gonna give you my answer live on what I think Rory's missing the cut odds are. Plus 9,000 is outrageous, Nick. It's gonna it's gonna be like plus 480, four
Yeah,
fifty.
so I'll preface this saying the longest odds to miss the cut are Scotty, of course, and that's plus 670.
So 9,000 might be a little off.
Okay,
9,000 a
guys, I don't
little off.
sports bet. I
Yeah,
need to
I
learn
know.
Nick
sports bet
This is
clearly,
speak.
good. This is good.
yeah,
You're exposing yourself as not a sports bettor, and I'm probably going to be way closer than I should be.
yeah. It's plus 570 actually. Which
That's
Nick, you
longer than I
might have
thought.
just talked me into sprinkling a few bucks on that
That's
one.
longer than I thought. I mean, he's missed the cut. For some historical context, he's missed the cut in two of his last five. Given he's also won and had a second place finish in two of his last five, but missed the cut. That's what I'm talking about. We're gonna get an extreme. Like it's gonna be a top. There's randomly a T22 in there, so pretend that never happened 2 years ago. But other than that, we get like a missed cut or a first and slash second out of Rory, and that's kind of what I expect to happen this year. I mean, he might show up. I mean, how many weeks has he taken off at this point? 3 weeks.
Has he played? He
His
hasn't
last
played since the
tournament,
players, right?
yeah, yeah. So March 15th. So we're pushing a month. So yeah, 3 full weeks off. He's coming to the Masters. For all I know, he could be totally recovered and a brand new man, and come out here and just light the world on fire. Um, I don't know, but I do think we're going to get one of those two extremes. I feel like we're going to get a top five, or we're going to get a miscut, and that's kind of where I stand. That's why he's my prove me wrong guy. I'm like, look, prove to me that if he misses the cut, I'll feel comfortable being like, okay, he reached the mountaintop and he doesn't really have, he doesn't have that same drive that he had last year when he was chasing down the green jacket. Or if he's a top five, I'll be like, okay, never mind, we're back. Like now he's playing with pressure off and he's playing, maybe he doesn't need that same fuel he needed last year, but now he's just playing free and he's swinging free and he has an opportunity to do something special and add some majors to his resume this year.
So what do you guys think is like the perfect balance in between, maybe Rory isn't the greatest example because he's kind of had the back, and Scotty's not the greatest example either because he just had a kid. But,
Same thing, pretty much.
yeah, exactly.
Back injury, second child,
Apples and oranges. What is the perfect balance between guys trying to plan out exactly? I heard Jake Knapp talking about this on a podcast, where he always will play in Houston and then he'll take off the Valero to then get ready for Masters Week. And I know Michael Kim had a tweet about this, I think last night, talking about especially coming off the weather that was happening at the Valero this past week, how, gassed it seemed some of the players were that competed, the caddies, all that stuff that goes into.
Well, especially like what was it, a 30-hole Sunday, a
Yeah,
28-hole
something
Sunday?
that comes
Yeah, at
does
least.
that, guys who might have played well last week, a good guy who's higher up on the odds boards than maybe he would have been even a few weeks ago, like Robert McIntyre. Does that, what happened last week take him out of it for you, or do you guys think, no, it's not that big a deal. These guys are used to it. They play, their bodies are trained to do this kind of thing.
I mean, the Augusta's a walk. Like Augusta is one of the more tiring walks that these guys take all year. So to be coming off like such an extreme weekend for a lot of those guys, like Robert McIntyre, like Ludwig, I feel like it can't not be a consideration. I think especially again, I like this is such a cop out answer. Like we'll see how they come out on Thursday. I'm sure, like you said, these guys are professional athletes. They have teams that are built to recover them for this event, that are built to get them ready and get their body in a place to do it. And again, we're talking about like, walking 72 hole or 18 holes a day, 72 holes. We're not talking about, extreme sports, but at the same time, like, yeah, if you do that 4 days in a row and then you walk whatever it is, 30 holes on Sunday in like pretty brutal wind and a lot of thoughts going into your shots. And then you try to come out to Augusta and do this walk and, they're doing a practice round, they're doing the par three, you do this walk a ton. Like it's something honestly that I hadn't given much thought, but it is worth considering that like, guys like Ludwig and Robert McIntyre and you know, Kevin Roy, I guess, who's not in the Masters but was in that final group. But like they put a lot of exertion into that Sunday. Michael Kim, another one, like you mentioned. I think, yeah, that's my thought on coming into it from a week to week perspective. I was going to say Jake Knapp. It's funny that you brought him up because I actually couldn't quite remember if he played at the Texas Children's Houston Open, and I was like, he did. He was T6 there after missing the cut at the Players, right?
Hmm.
But I couldn't quite remember if he played at Texas Children's at Memorial Park, and I was like, man, I hope he's not coming off a missed cut at the Players because that was. There are some circumstances where it does weigh on my mind a little bit. Like with if, for example, if Jake Knapp had not had that T6 at Texas Children's, he'd be coming off a weird illness where he withdrew before a tournament and then a missed cut at the Players, and then you're like, and then you come into Augusta, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't know who's showing up, and that's kind of how I feel about Rory, to be honest. Like, we don't know who we're getting right now. Like, I don't know where his back is. Same with Colin. I don't know where their back is. I don't know what kind of like if we're working with like, oh, we're just gonna we have tape all over it, and we're hoping he doesn't like re-aggravate it. And if that happens, that might be an issue. I don't know if we're like, oh no, it was an in the moment thing, and then 2 days later he felt totally fine. So that's a really long-winded way of answering your question with two different answers. I think in terms of day to day, like I have to believe that Robert McIntyre and Ludwig are running on a little bit more fumes than some of these other guys are, um, that have taken those weeks off. But some of the guys who have taken weeks off, I just don't, because we don't have data for those weeks. I just don't know who's showing up.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a mix. I think that's why I think I said from before, like when it came time to like dissecting some of like the worst results at Valero, that I wasn't giving too much thought into it because I definitely feel like once it got to a certain point with the weather, like unless you were like top five or above, I definitely think people shifted
Checking
towards
out.
self-preservation, towards the Masters. Like they'll never admit to it, but I definitely think there was a lot of
Yeah.
that. And so I wouldn't put too
Jordan
much weight
Spieth,
into it.
perhaps. You're trying to explain away that two over par final round or whatever it was that Jordan Spieth had a little
I
bit.
mean, just you wait.
Okay, should we start moving towards picks, or should we do a little? I'll list off very quickly. I won't go into opinion. The guys who have like really good course history here. I feel like that's relevant, and then we jump into picks. Does that
Yep.
sound
Yeah,
like a
that's fair.
plan? I think obviously we know a couple of these. Scotty Scheffler, 6 starts, never been worse than T19, has those 2 wins, a T10 and fourth place finish in his last four. Um, again, we've talked a lot about Scotty, so I won't harp on that too much. We just don't entirely know what to expect from him after kind of a weird start to the year. Colin Morikawa, again, we talked about it, back injury. Don't know who's showing up, but in his last 5 starts, he hasn't been outside the top 18. Solo fifth in 2022, T5 in 2024. Patrick Reed is always just super fun. I feel like every Masters you kind of you have to be in on Patrick Reed. I don't know what to do other than that. I think he's been outside the top 12 just once in his last 6 starts. That was 2022, and that doesn't even include the win he had in 2018. That falls outside of that 6 year span. His last 3 starts are a solo third, a T12, a T4, and now he's kind of coming off playing hot. I mean, again, he's another guy who hasn't played in a month. I think his last start was March 8th, that tournament on the DP World Tour. But he's playing hot. He's got 2 wins. He had a T2 in that storied playoff that we talked about that featured a shank across some water. Um, but he's definitely somebody to watch. Xander Schauffele, another one you guys mentioned. God, I feel like every single person I talk about, I'm like, yeah, but I also don't know who's like, I don't know how they're playing right now, but they've historically played really well at the Masters. Xander Schauffele falls into that. John Rahm always plays really well here. Obviously has his win. Corey Connors. For how many weeks am I going to say that Corey Connors has really good course history here? I feel like I've said that 20 times this year somehow, and yet like he just isn't. I mean, he's won the Valero. Actually, we're coming off one of his defended titles, but um, yeah, four top tens in the last 6 years for 6 years for Corey Connors. T8 last year. There are a couple guys who have had like short spurts going on. Like obviously Ludwig Oberg has 2 starts here, solo second and solo seventh. Pretty good first 2 starts. Probably only bested really in recent history by maybe Will Zalatoris and the one and only Jordan Spieth, who went, I believe it was T2 to a win, and then he backed it
Right.
up with another T2 the next year in 2016, which we don't need to talk about.
Nope.
Talked about that enough. Um, Bryson DeChambeau, T5, T6 last 2 years. Max Homa randomly T12, T3 in the last 2 years. And that T12 kind of came when he was playing pretty well in 2024. Or sorry, the T3 came when he was playing pretty well in 2024, but the T12 last year, he did not come in particularly good form and still managed to show up and play pretty well at the Masters. And Tyrrell Hatton, a guy that I really haven't given much thought to. I feel like he's one of those guys that I kind of have this realization every few months when a major is coming up. I'm like, oh my God, Tyrrell Hatton's here and he's really good always for some reason. T14 and T9 in the last 2 years for Tyrrell Hatton. So there's more. I didn't even mention the great Jordan Spieth just because his run of greatness was a little bit more historical and a little bit more sporadic, but obviously he has a lot of really great finishes here as well. Yeah, I mean, we could go on and on, obviously, but those are some of the names. I don't know if you guys any of those popped out to you as people you're particularly hyper focused on this week, but those are the
It
ones that
didn't
stood out to me.
it didn't pop out so much in the sense that I'm pulling for him. It just popped out for the fact that Max Homa is in the 35 plus category. He's 35.
I know, dude. Oh my God. When I was doing those categories, I had so many of those where I was like, oh my God, what the hell are you doing here? For a little clarification, in the picks groups that we're gonna do in a second, there's a 35 and over category that excludes past champions. And yeah, Max Homa is in that category. As is Nick Taylor, JJ Spawn, Gary Woodland, I think I knew. But there was a couple names, Brooks Koepka, one of them, that kind of popped up. Russell Henley, another one, popped up in there where I'm like, really? Okay. Who knew? I didn't know that. Because I think that's the one of the interesting things about golf is that like no matter what age you are, like if you start playing real well, you're just going to be a part of it. And like the age doesn't play that much of a role. So I kind of like I don't associate these guys with their ages, like the fact that we'll get to the 25 and under category. Akshay is like by far the most qualified person in that group. You've got he's among like Ethan Fang and Mason Howell and Casey Jarvis and like these guys, and then it's just oh yeah, and Akshay Bhatia is also 24 years old. Um, so there was definitely a couple realizations in there as I was going through. Yeah, Max Homa was one of the main ones, Nick, where I was like, 35, really? Okay,
Jump
sure.
scare.
Yeah.
Somebody says
Should we do it? Should we do picks? I mean, I feel like that's where we're leaning. There's a lot of other guys to get to, but I do think that we're going to talk a lot about them in picks, and I don't want
Yeah,
to
I
make this
agree.
be 2 hours long. So I think we talked about this a little bit off air. I think this is our strategy. We're going to start giving our official picks. That gives us an opportunity to talk about our favorite guys a little bit. And then we're going to go into some categories. This is going to be kind of like the typical like Masters pool you see, a lot of the times those are separated by odds. For us, it's going to be different categories. We're going to pick one first timer. We're going to pick a past champion from before 2020 because that's a little bit more fun. We're going to pick somebody 25 and under. We're going to pick somebody 35 and over. And then the last category is just titled one more. There was too many guys that I wanted to talk about. So I gave us one more category to just throw another name in the ring of somebody you think is going to do really well. And we are going to be doing this in like a draft style. I mean, maybe our official picks overlap. I don't know. But for the rest of the categories, we're going to do this in a little bit of a draft style. I'll throw a random wheel going and we'll see who goes first, second, and third, and we'll do it snake order. So for one category, somebody will go first, then second, then third. The next category, we will go three, two, one, and continue that onwards. But should we start with our official picks, our official picks, the ones that we're going to put our names on, and that's going to be in the graphic, the one graphic with only three names on it. That's going to really decide if we're smart or stupid. It means
Yeah, let's
everything.
go for it.
Do you guys want me to kick it off? Because I texted you. I don't know who yours are, but you know who mine are because I did put it in this sheet.
Yeah, I say we let Will go ahead.
This is against like all of my better judgment. I think like this
I
is
think
just
that's how
like
you should make your picks
I
against your
think that's
better
right.
judgment.
Yeah, I mean
Don't tempt me with a good time.
historically, I've tried better judgment does not work, so we're going against it now. I'm going Bryson DeChambeau. I think. Look,
Just
I know.
insane.
I don't think so. Look, we talked about his course history. All right, like he's one of those guys who, in the past few years, T5, T6, um, he had the opportunity to win. I mean, I talked about his first round in 2024. Even that's before this, he led the tournament after the first round at 7 under before absolutely imploding. I think the question is like, can he actually close this thing out? Can he put 4 rounds together? I don't know. I have no idea. But he has just as much opportunity to do it as anybody, and he's playing like again. This is the thing I have with Bryson and John Rahm that I don't know how to weigh is what does live golf win? What does a win on live golf mean? Like what is John Rahm having like one? Cal giving me a big old zero. Um, like we have John Rahm. What is him having five? What is it? Whatever it is, five starts and one win and a bunch of top twos. Me like I don't know. But I think this pick for me was a little bit more about like one, I think Bryson's really good, and I think there's an opportunity here. Two, I think it would be really funny if Rory hands him the green jacket. I think that would just be
That would be
the content. The content that would
Yes.
come out of that would be
oh, that'd
awesome.
be great.
But also, I'm just to me, it was looking at like who else could like I don't want to pick Scotty. I just don't think. I mean, I know we're not incorporating like odds into our actual picks here, but Scotty's at four. Like I don't think Scotty has a much better chance to win than a lot of these guys. I don't like the way he's been coming in. I don't know what him having a kid could mean. It could be great. It could be bad. And that's nothing. No hate to the kid, by the way. Hope hope he's doing really well. Sounds like
Remy
he's very
Scheffler.
healthy. Yeah, Remy Scheffler. Sounds like he'll be on site. Sounds like the whole family is at
That would
Augusta.
be awesome.
But I don't know, maybe a couple late nights caring for the baby. I don't know, but whatever. And John Rahm, I struggle with. Rory McIlroy, we talked about. Ludwig Oberg, we talked about. Xander Schauffele. And now we're getting into like longer shots. Tommy Fleetwood, Cameron Young, Matt Fitzpatrick, Hideki. To me, it was just like, okay, I got to pick one of them. And Bryson stands out as somebody that like he can absolutely do it. He's shown that he plays really well here. Again, doesn't necessarily convert, but there's a first time for everything. And I think that first time might be this year. I'm gonna stick with my guy. Um, I don't know. He's proven to me that he can play smart, and maybe it's the genuine side of him that popped out to talk to Astros
I was
Tally
just
after
gonna
that
say,
and one
would you have
victory.
done this if it weren't for that PR stunt?
I don't know. Maybe I've got a little
PR
yeah, the
stunt
PR
is
stuff.
crazy.
Maybe I've got a little soft spot for it now. Maybe I'm getting old and I'm getting soft, but I don't know. Bryson's going to be my pick. He is third in odds, which I think is kind of surprising. Honestly, I thought he'd be a little bit. The fact
That
that two
just
live golfers are second and third is a little crazy, but
Yeah, that
it
is a
has to
little.
be
nonetheless,
just the name recognition and the book. It's just trying to get action. There's no the golf merit. There's no way they should be tied for the second best odds.
well, he's unfortunately it's working on me because I'm taking him.
There you
So I'm
go.
curious to hear who you guys are going with, but Bryson DeChambeau is going to be my pick.
Yeah,
Well, I
Nick, you go
can.
ahead. Let you guys take the first two picks since neither of you have picked anyone right yet this year.
Yeah, Kyle. The people are just waiting for Kyle, so we might. Nick,
Yeah,
let's just get
Kyle
this
gets to
out of
go
the
last.
way.
I think like for me, I think it's got to be Matt Fitzpatrick. I think
I know.
I've
Yeah,
I've been saying it for weeks now. I think if you go back and look at everybody that has won the last like five Masters, they are without a doubt one of the best golfers on like a top five golfer on the planet right now. It's someone that you talk about definitely. I don't think like I said at the beginning of the episode too that form is not as important because Augusta is kind of like the great equalizer. But I definitely think that it plays a very, very big role. And I think when looking at who are the front runners, I think that it's quite obvious that some of the best golfers are the best. Fitz won in his last start at the Valspar, was second at the Players, one of the best iron players on tour right now. Just overall, he drives the ball really well. I think I've talked a lot about that like low burner cut that he hits, and I think if the
hmm
fairways are firm, I think that's definitely a shot that can play really well there. And so I think that in terms of Fitz, just he also fits the mold too. Like he's not he's had some good results at Augusta in the past, and he is a major champion as well. And so I think that sort of gives him the edge in the sense of probably he's contended at a major before. He's came from behind to win at a major, and so I don't think the pressure is really going to get to him either.
I have two questions. First is a question for both of you. Nick, you probably looked this up, so this is more for Kyle. What number Masters do you think this is for Matt Fitzpatrick?
Oh, I did not look
I
this up.
I know this
Nick,
because
okay.
I read it earlier today and I
I
Oh
was
do know this one.
damn,
shocked.
Yes,
I was absolutely shocked.
it's his 12th
I
and 11th in a
know.
row.
Crazy.
They said that on the interviews this morning. They were like, "You're the second longest tenured. Only Hideki has one more straight Masters than you. This is Hideki's 12th in a row, I guess. This is Fitzpatrick's 10th, 11th in a row, that blew my mind. I was astonished. I don't know. That was the only reaction. I was hoping I could get a little game out of you guys, but it seems like you were too well prepared for that.
We're on our
Um,
game.
yeah. The other question I have, Nick, and this is also so you talked a lot about the low burner cut. I agree. But so I was Matt Fitzpatrick had his interview this morning, and one thing he mentioned um, was that well, first he did mention that he this is the most confident he's ever been coming into a Masters, and he said that doesn't mean I'm going to win, but this is the most confident I've ever felt coming to the Masters, which kind of gave me the ick. I don't know. I was like, you should probably not be saying that. That doesn't mean you're going to win. Don't be hedging my expectations. But the main thing that I took away was that he mentioned that he hits. So you talked about this with his driver, that low cut. He talked about how he hits his irons a bit lower, and that can cause some trouble at Augusta, holding greens and stuff. And he also mentioned that now he hits more of a cut spin low iron, which should theoretically help it hold a little bit. I'm curious to like because that just him talking about that made me worry a little bit inherently because it's like, okay, well, you hit low irons into a firm and fast green at Augusta, it's gonna be hard to hold it. And he is a good around the green player, and he obviously knows how to control his irons because he's one of the best approach players in the world. So I'm not that worried, but I am curious what like you like. Obviously, it's not a perfect fit, right? Like it's gonna be more about like managing how to work that to Augusta rather than like,
Right.
no, I can just like hit my like the Rory high iron that just lands and doesn't move, right? Like we're playing with a different shot here. So I'm curious to hear what you think about that.
I think at the end of the day that quote doesn't really bug me as much as maybe it bugged you, just because I think what's the alternative? He's going to come
Yeah.
at the like I'm beating all of you guys this week. Like you guys are all
Oh,
coming in
that first
second to
quote.
me.
Yeah, that's
Like
fair.
that I'm not really too bothered by that. But I think I think just the fact that he's as confident as he is, I think that definitely is a bit that's definitely encouraging to me, and the stats do back that up. But when it comes to like the course fit of like the holding the greens and stuff like that, I do think that obviously it's not a perfect system, but I do think that I kind of want to like take that with a grain of salt, just because I know how analytical Matt Fitzpatrick is.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think he even talked in the press conference that he still
Oh,
has the notes from his
hmm.
first Masters as well that he goes
Dude,
back and looks at.
every other question was like, how does your data oriented approach to Augusta fit? Like, how it was so fun. And no other golfer ever gets asked that. But because Matt
Right.
Fitzpatrick is so intense about his data, like literally every other question was relating to that stuff. It was really interesting to hear him talk about it. I know he's a psychopath when it comes to that stuff in a good way.
Right.
Psychopath parentheses complimentary, but yeah, I like it. I was a little scared to go all in on Matty Fitz, but I do expect good things from him this week for sure.
Yeah, and I think
I
that like I don't I'm definitely going to take his analytics with a grain of salt, just because he strikes me as someone that overthinks everything, and then when it comes down to it, he does what he needs to do. So that doesn't put me off, is what I'm trying to say.
ninth in odds, by the way, just for a little context for
I'll
the
take
people
it.
listening. Kyle
Not a bad pick. Okay. Well, I'm gonna
says
zag.
the judge.
I'm
Are
gonna
you Kyle?
zag
Are you
against.
going Nico Echeverria?
It's not go crazy. No, I'm taking Jordan Spit. No, come on. What are we talking about? I'm going with Xander.
I like
I,
it. I like that a
Ooh,
lot.
okay.
Nick scared me off a little bit at the beginning of this pod, but he's making his ninth Masters appearance, which is I think kind of the sweet spot here. He's got plenty of experience. Five top tens in eight prior starts, including a T10 in 23, solo 8 in 24, and a T8 last year. He plays the course well. He knows it well. He's coming into this tournament playing well this season. Two top fives in his two most recent starts. He was third at the Players and T4 at Valspar. He's a two-time major champ. He's been there. He's done that. I think it could be his time.
I think Kyle, talk about we were just talking about Matt Fitzpatrick being an overthinker. I think us like so many people are overthinking Xander Schauffele right now. I mean,
Yeah.
Nick, you mentioned at the top of the podcast like his start to the season and how thrown off we were. That was missing the cut at the Farmers and then T41 at the WM. In the
Mhm.
five starts since then, he has not been worse than T24. He's got a T4 and a third at the Players. a T4 at the Valspar, a T7 at the Genesis. Like he's been playing really, really good golf. And like you said, Kyle, like it like plays really well around Augusta. Like I think to be like really worried about what form he's coming in with is like I think he's just a really good golfer who plays really well here, and I don't think there needs to be that much more thought about it.
I mean, I just he just plays so well here. I just think he's gonna get one of these years.
Yeah, and I
Um,
think like I'm sorry, but just like to the guys we were talking about, right? Like where we don't know what kind of form they're coming in with, the Rorys, the Collins, the Scotties. I feel like Xander unfairly gets lumped into that a little bit. Where people are like, well, I don't know how he's going to show up. It's like, well, he's played five straight really good tournaments. Like I feel like we do kind of know what kind of golf he's playing. And he's not one of those guys who had a random back injury. He's not one of those guys who's, in the last, sure, he was not great to start the season. Those were his first two tournaments in quite some time since he won the Bay Current Classic in the fall. That was in October. So yeah, he had 3 months off, came back, didn't play that well, and then found it and has been playing great. So yeah, I think to really be particularly worried is to overthink it a little bit.
okay, and then so should I just take my other guy here, snake it?
Well, do you guys want to randomize or just snake? We can just snake if you want.
Yeah, I think
Either way.
we don't have
Yeah.
to make
Okay.
this too complicated.
Okay.
Sure. Okay. So we're going first timers, debutantes, right? Like that's the category we're jumping into here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Kyle, give us your first timer. Do I need to? I'll go through the list after Kyle. There's not that many, to be honest. There's some, but
Yeah, I
okay, go
mean,
ahead.
there's it's a, first of all, none of these guys are going to win. I think that's the
Yes.
the thing we know
Yes,
is
that is
that
true.
Yes. Yes.
debutantes do not win at the Masters. But if we're taking
We're going for
guys and
the lowest we can
accumulating
find.
scores, exactly,
Yeah.
I'm glad I have the first pick, and I got to go Jacob Bridgman.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
he's
I
he's
think
just
that
been
is
he's just been too
you're
good to
probably
ignore
right.
this year. Um,
Yeah.
the dude is just lights out. I mean, you look at his results this year, it's pretty freaking unbelievable. His worst finish is a T18. He's Sony, and he's played a lot too. I
Yeah.
mean, he's won obviously the Genesis. He was T5 at the Players. Valspar was his last tournament he played. He was T14 there. I mean, he's just been lights out this year.
Yeah. I think the one like the area you or so I was obviously I would have taken him first overall too if I was sitting in your shoes. I think I was looking at his stuff before. The one area you worry about is like what we talked about, that balance of approach and around the greens, whereas around the greens play hasn't been his strong suit. He's a really, really good putter, which is important, but typically doesn't like differentiate you a ton at Augusta, especially for first timers who don't know the greens that well. But you could also argue that maybe for a first timer who doesn't know the greens that well, it's way more important for him to be a really good putter. Again, I would have taken him for sure. It's crazy, man. And we talked about it, what, a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the guys who, got off to really hot starts, the Chris Gotterups. We were like, okay, who's going to be the people? Who are going to be the ones that separate and prove that they're here at the big tournaments too, at the signature events, at the players, at major tournaments. And so far, that's been Jake Knapp and Jacob Bridgman. And asterisk next to Jake Knapp because of that missed cut at the players, but nonetheless, I mean, he has been really good, and those are the two guys to me that have really proven themselves as they're here and they're going to be here for all these tournaments right now.
Yeah, I think like just going and transitioning to my pick, I think what I really wanted to pick Jacob Bridgman too, because I saw on Twitter a couple days ago that before every Masters of the last 4 years, whoever was leading whoever was like the best player on tour per data golf ended up winning the Masters. So Scotty in 2022, Rom in 23, Scheffler 24, Rory 25, they were all like the best player on tour at that moment. And
Mm.
so if, Jacob Bridgman is the current data golf leader in data golf points right now. And so I feel like that has to
Wow.
lend to him. And so because I can't do that, I got to go with number two with Chris Gotterup.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah,
He
you
was
guys are putting
someone.
me in a screwed up position here. But go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah.
There's
I'm
nobody
definitely,
else.
definitely very high on Chris Gotterup. He's someone that has been, he won he won two out of his first three events of the year. He's someone that was here to stay was maybe the argument heading into it. Obviously, he missed the cut at the Genesis, 37th at Pebble, but then 18th at Arnold Palmer, and then finished sixth in Houston, where the putter was pretty good towards the later stages. I think, off the tee, he's someone where accuracy isn't great, and Augusta is not super penalizing off the tee. I think obviously if you like blow it into the trees, then game over. But like the rough is not super thick as it's not super thick in general, and so I think Goddard missing fairways is not going to be my biggest hesitancy. I think he's a very good iron player. I think he's very good approach. Putting is serviceable, and that is kind of one of my question marks heading into the week. But if I can't have Jacob Bridgman, I think Chris Goddard is a good consolation prize.
Yeah, I would be inclined to agree. He would also be my second, I think. Although I don't think he actually was my second when I wrote this out, but I'm now kind of heavily regretting that. But I so to I promise I'm not crazy when I pick who I pick, but just to give a little bit of color on who else is even here, Ben Griffin is the name that stands out. And we
Oof.
talked about this a little bit. Let's talk. Texas Children's Houston Open T28. His best result in like 2 months. Before that, it was cut. T41, T37, T28. And then you can go back to the American Express T24, Sony Open T19. So I can't. I unfortunately cannot
I was
ride
gonna
with
say you
that. Like
cannot be
I
serious.
absolutely cannot ride with that. Like there's no shot that you could get me on board.
Oh, God.
You have a lot of you have a lot of AMs here. Ethan Fang, Mason Howell, Jackson Harrington, a lot of the guys that are going to be in that 25 and under category. And I think that's where I'm struggling is because there's a guy that I like here that I might be able to get. I probably could get in the 25 and under category, but I think I got to take him here because it's also Ryan Gerard, Harry Hall, Andrew Novak. Ryan Gerard, one of those guys that started off strong and then kind of proved that he wasn't. Maybe it was the smaller events that were helping him out a little bit. I'm going to go with Casey Jarvis, who
Okay.
I'm kind of probably way too in on Casey Jarvis this year at the Masters specifically. And I texted both of you, and I think I actually said it on the podcast I did on Sunday that I'd like to log my Casey Jarvis Rookie of the Year 2027 uh, bid right now. But for a little background, he's only 22, first time. Don't love it. He's at 20 plus 23,000 to win. Again, I don't think he's going to win. None of these guys are going to win. But that doesn't really give him a good that doesn't give him good odds to make the cut or do anything really. So this could be a make or break type of pick here where he misses the cut and I get screwed over. But uh, my reasoning here is that he's one of the few hot hands left in this category. You look at his recent play, it's on the DP World Tour, T13 at the Hero India Open, T2 at the Joburg Open, won the Investec South Africa Open Championship to get in here in the first place. The week before that, won the Magical Kenya Open. He's been playing really, really well. Like he also has a solo third in December, a T9 at the Bahrain Championship in early February. He's one of the few guys in this category that you can look at and be like, okay, I'm at least comfortable with the way he's playing. Like he's at least playing well, has won a couple times. I can't necessarily, there's like, there's just not that much strokes gained stuff for him. So I can't necessarily say that his game fits. The around the green stuff worries me from the events he has played. But really, this is more of like the lesser of 24 evils. Like it's just tough. It's looking at this list was tough. I think the argument I'm having in my head, right, is like there's so many more recognizable names on here. There's Ryan Gerard, Harry Hall, Andrew Novak, Marco Penge is another one that maybe I would have argued that I could have been convinced to take Marco Penge here. But man, there's just it's a pretty you're betting on long shots once you take Jacob Bridgman and Chris Goddard up out of the equation here. So that's going to be where I go. I'm not super psyched about it, but I could look really smart in about 4 days, 5 days, when Casey Jarvis is like top 20 for no reason at all.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. Which brings us to the next. I'm glad yeah, you know what? I could really make Nick pissed off. I'm not going to do it. The next category is past champion from pre 2020. I'm going to go with I think, right answer here with Patrick Reed. This is a little bit of a deeper field. I think Patrick Reed, we talked about him a little bit. He's just like the last few years has proven that he knows how to play the Masters. He's won it in 2018. Even since then, he's played really well. Had that solo third finish last year. Obviously, that was kind of a fake backdoor solo third. And there are lots of other names on this list. I think it's a little bit deeper that you could pick. But there's probably only like three or four guys that I'd want here, and I think Patrick Reed is. I'm pretty comfortable with that. I feel like I don't need to go into a lot of depth. We've talked about him a lot. Again, he's riding a hot hand with a bunch of DP World Tour wins, same as Casey Jarvis. I think I'm building up the non PGA Tour actually right now. I've got Bryson DeChambeau, Casey Jarvis, and Patrick Reed to start my team off here. So live and two DP World Tour guys. But hey, you know what? You never know. I like Patrick Reed, so we'll see what he can do this week.
And so I'm gonna cause a bit of a pattern here. You'd
Alrighty then.
mentioned Matt, yeah, Matt Fitzpatrick. You said complimentary psychotic. We're keeping with the psychotic trend. We got to go with the all-time stroke average leader at Augusta National, Mr. Jordan Spieth. I don't really think this is that unhinged. If we're being honest, like if this was any other tournament, I would sound crazy right now. But I think just because it's Augusta, because of his course history at Augusta, like look, there are obvious red flags that I am ignoring right now. He has not contended once. He has not contended once this year. He has not played 18 straight holes without some dumb mental mistake. So that being said, if there was anybody you can never bet against, even when it was like 2018 to 2021, when he was in his first like really bad spiral and just looked absolutely lost, he was still getting top tens at Augusta, and it was still like very much a part of that. He was still contending at least at Augusta. It was like the one course that could kind of like break him from his insanity. And so I think if there's one course where I'm not going to bet against Jordan Spieth, I want him on my team at Augusta National. I
Yeah, I
love
got
these
nothing.
blank faces
What's
right now.
what's the over under on hours into the broadcast where we see a club coming from behind a tree and you just know that it's Spieth's ball back there.
I read this was Gabby Herzig from The Athletic. I think last year she won the media lottery to play
Hmm.
Augusta on the Monday. And she posted her scorecard. And I think the note that she said was, for anybody wondering how I got a 9 on hole 2, there is water in the trees. If you go far enough left, there is water on 2. And nobody knows that. And my hot take is that Jordan Spieth is in that water at least once this week.
Okay, well, I think I've got to go with Adam Scott.
Okay.
Yeah, I
He's
like it.
he's like weirdly this year kind of been around. Like
Yeah.
he's played a bunch, way more than like you'd kind of think. He hasn't missed a cut. He's got a solo fourth at the Genesis. He was T21 at the Texas Children Houston Open. Really, his worst start has been at the Players. But he hasn't necessarily played well at the Masters either lately. He missed the cut last year, but he was T22 in 2024. And I just think he's played well this year. And you've kind of I've you as you watch all these tournaments this year, he just kind of kept on appearing, and I'm like, oh yeah, Adam Scott still doing it, still playing well.
He was my second guy. I had him over Jordan Spieth. I'm sorry, Nick. He was number two for me. Um,
Yeah,
but it's
any
also
reasonable person would have had him as the
I think I
second
mean, yeah,
guy.
you look at the rest of the guys in this field, in this group, right? Past champions pre 2020. You got Sergio Garcia, Danny Willett, Bubba Watson, Charles Schwartzel, Angel Cabrera, Zach Johnson, Mike Weir, Vijay Singh, Jose Maria Olazabal, and Fred Couples. I think Zach Johnson's the only person you could kind of mention, but really it's those
Yeah,
three. It's really
for
Patrick Reed,
sure.
Jordan Spieth, and Adam Scott. I don't think there's much debate around who those top three should be.
Yeah,
It's okay.
definitely.
I'll remember this on Monday when Rory McIlroy misses the cut and Jordan Spieth is wearing a green jacket. I'll remember this.
The one from
If that
2015, or
if that happens, I say we just let Nick go solo for 3 hours, and we just maybe do a watch along where we rewatch Spieth's
yeah.
rounds, and Nick just commentates on. Oh my goodness,
I
could
will
you
be live
imagine?
streaming on Sunday if
Oh,
he's
if Spieth
in.
is in contention on Sunday and we're over at Nick's watching, I will be pounding every drink available there. I
Oh, he'll
will.
be insufferable. What are they? The azaleas? What are those drinks
Oh
called?
yeah, those are gonna
Yeah, Kyle
be.
will be 14 deep.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay,
We're
how
gonna have
about
fun
the
on Sunday. Let's just say that.
yeah, oh yeah. All right, on to the 25 and under group. This one's a little more fun. I think there's some
Yeah,
good
there's
picks
some
here.
names.
I'm glad I've got the first pick though. And
Mm,
I'm going with the obvious one. It's got to be Akshay.
yeah,
Has
it's
to
chalk.
be.
He's clearly the best golfer in this group. He's going to win the Masters. Probably not this year, but one of these years, he's going to do it. And him being a lefty too really
Hmm.
serves him well here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I mean,
definitely
obviously
don't hate that.
the Arnold Palmer Invitational win, and like if we don't count the Hero India Open, which I'm comfortable not counting, top 20
Yeah.
finishes in each of his last five starts. Um, doesn't have great history here, but like, yeah, I mean, this is I there was nowhere else to go.
Well, I mean, there's a
Oh
nice
boy,
consolation prize. I'm I'm okay with Nikolai Højgaard as a consolation
damn it,
prize.
you bastard, you absolute bastard. Yeah, okay, that's fine.
This is
I'm
going to be
fine
a
with that.
pattern here. This is great. Where I'm guaranteed to go second every single round, no matter what. So I get the number two. This is great.
I wanted
Um,
him so bad. I wanted him so fucking bad.
good good profile for just an overall 2026. Obviously, his last start was second at the Houston Open, which I feel like we really didn't. Oh no, the Houston. Never mind. He didn't play Valero. I was gonna say we didn't really talk
Hmm.
about him last week, which that would make sense why we didn't. Um, but yeah, or second at Houston, sixth at the Cognizant, T3 at Waste Management, and if you want to go back even further, T4 at the Hero Dubai. Um, really just kind of a Jekyll and Hyde at Augusta, though, I will say. T16 in 2024 with 1.8 strokes gained, cut in 2025 with 1.5 strokes lost. And so this is where, approach play, he's one of the best on tour. Driving distance, he's great. Driving accuracy, not so much. Around the green, he's very shaky around the green. Let's just say that. And this is where I'm going to lean on recent form rather than any sort of course fit or anything like that, and just hope he can get me a nice T25.
I think he's going to do you a lot better than that, frankly. Man, I was really hoping he was going to fall to me. This was the dilemma I was having before because I knew Casey Jarvis would be here when I got to this point, but there just wasn't anybody in the first timers list that I liked. I think, I mean, you guys know how much I love Nikolai Højgaard and what I think he can do. I My one note on him this week was my goat. Um, I think, I mean, again, he hits the ball far and he hits his irons really high. So, like, that is a recipe for good stuff. Obviously, first time at Augusta, you can never ask for too much. But if you're looking for a sneaky little, you know, top debutante type of bet, I think, is he a debutante? No, he's not a debutante. Sorry. What was it? Like top Scandinavian or top whatever it was. There's an interesting little bet out there where he and his brother and two other dudes are the only ones. And speaking of his brother, I think that might be where I have to go. I don't love it. There are a couple other names that I'm curious about, but I think yeah, looking at it, there's really not much else to do here other than take the twin, Rasmus Højgaard, and hope that I'm picking the right one here, or actually Nick is letting me pick the right one here. For some of the other names in here, you got the AMs, obviously Ethan Fang, Jackson Harrington, FIFA Laupacti, and Matteo Pulcini, but the PGA Tour names on here are also and I left off Mason Howell off that AM list accidentally. The PGA Tour names on here are not particularly riveting at this point. You've got Michael Brennan, who is so confusing. Apparently, he's like, do you guys know who Michael Brennan is? By the
I
way,
know the name.
he's like around, like very legitimately around. He has not played well since coming up to the PGA Tour after being on PGA Tour Americas. Actually, it's not true. So he was on PGA Tour Americas, won three of four events, then went top five twice in a row. This is in September. Came out to the PGA Tour, won the first event of his career, which is I think how we know his name, right? Like that's I remember that coming out in the fall. October at the Bank of Utah Championship, he wins his first PGA Tour event ever. Since then, he has won top 20 in like 14 events or something like that. And he was like 35th in the world after he won the Bank of Utah championship. I think he's currently 47th in the world on OWGR. which is just sort of surprising. I guess I just didn't know that. But like again, he's one of those similar to the conversation I had about Ben Griffin. Like you just look at a page that's all red and no top 20s, and you can't really pick that. Johnny Kiefer had one good finish this year. Aldrich Pocketer. I mean, it could be magical if he straightens that drive out and decides to play really well, but that's there's too much risk there. I got to go Rasmus Højgaard. Oh, which means it's my turn. Oh my God. Okay. So now we're in the 35
Was
and
the
over.
Højgaard special you were looking at top Nordic?
Yeah, so there's top
Ooh.
Nordic,
Because
and
that's
right,
with
it's like,
Ludwig, Victor, the
oh
Højgaard
no,
brothers.
that wasn't the one I was looking at. Give me 2 seconds. I have it actually open, probably on my computer, if I'm being totally honest with myself. Let's see. Open. Oh, never mind. I gotta log in. It's crazy that they make you do that, isn't it? Ridiculous. But yeah, we're moving on to the 35 and over category once I can figure this out. Once I can tell you guys what this exact bet was, because it was one, it didn't have the Ludwig situation, which obviously would be a little
And
bit
that's
more
a
hesitant for me.
really
It
niche.
was it was top Danish.
Top
God,
Danish.
Danish.
The top Danish,
Okay.
where I believe it's just like Nikolai, his brother, and two others that are a little off the pace there. Um, anyways, 35 and over. This excludes the past champs because we already did that, and then otherwise the list would have been really long. 35 was kind of a weird number to pick, but it gave us a decent sized field and some interesting names. Um, 35 and over. I gotta take, yeah, I gotta do there's actually, this is a good one. There's a lot of people you can take.
Oh, there's
I
one guy clearly above the others.
You think I'm taking Tommy? Is that who
Yeah,
you're?
he's
Yeah, yeah, I
easily
agree.
the best one
Well,
in
I
this
think I
group.
think I mean the Justin Rose just was in a playoff last year with Rory, almost won it. Already has a win this year by, what was it, the Farmers? He won by like 7 shots or whatever it
Yeah.
was. Obviously he hasn't like kept that form up, but there's a lot of good names in here. Jason Day. I'll let you guys take a couple names here. But yeah, I gotta go with Tommy Fleetwood. Like you said, Kyle, I think just the name on this list, the one that you read, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, obviously got the monkey off his back at the FedEx Cup last year, which Nick and I have had a separate conversation about that, about whether that should count, but it does. It does count. So you never know. Again, I don't think even in this case, I don't think he's winning, but I think he's absolutely a safe bet to get me a good score, and he's not going to be the one dragging the team down. Knock on wood. So I'm going Tommy.
I, through pure accident, overlooked Tommy and did not even realize he was on this list. And so I was thinking that you were going to pick Justin Rose, in which case that is who I
Mm,
will be picking.
okay. Yeah.
One point about Tommy, and then I'll get into Justin Rose. I think that, we've obviously talked about, did he get unfairly vaulted into stardom because he's a FedEx Cup champion, because of just the way that ruling worked out? I think for me, what's really going to settle whether or not we can classify him as one of the top golfers in the world instead of just like around like he usually is whether he contends at the Masters. And I think if he
Yeah.
can contend at the highest stage, then yes, it's fair to call him one of the world's best golfers. But for now, like I still kind of view him as almost one of those like side characters that you could like see contending, but not
I
necessarily.
mean,
Wow. I can't
T3 in
believe this.
2024, T3 in 2024 at the Masters for Tommy Fleetwood, T21 last year. T3 is the only year where he really,
You guys are
posted top
acting like
five.
this guy hasn't done anything.
Because
I
he
picked him,
Jeez
hasn't.
Kyle.
Louise,
I
this is
picked him.
crazy.
He backdoored a top five, or top three in 2020. What did I say? 2024, when he was 7 shots behind Scotty Scheffler. So I picked him. I think he's going to do great. I just don't think this. I don't think he's in contention to win this week.
Right.
I'll
And
be
so I
honest.
think, if I can get a prove me wrong guy this week, we'll throw Fleetwood on the prove me wrong list. I think we'll
Oh,
say
I
that.
yeah. Okay.
But
Yeah.
in terms
That's
of
a
Justin
he's always
Rose, I think Justin Rose ages like fine wine. Like he has
yeah.
almost discovered himself the last few years. He's been one of the best players in the world. Obviously that Farmers was truly incredible. I think just seeing how there was never any semblance of a doubt that he wasn't going to close that out. And so I think you look back last year, I think he had a very decent chance to win that tournament as well at the Masters. And so I think in terms of he's one of the best 35 and older, because like, yeah, Jason Day, I think was, someone I was looking at too, but like
Mhm.
Dustin Johnson, that's someone I was a
No.
bit, that's a no. Keegan, probably not. Um, Max Homa, who I just discovered was 35 years old approximately 20 minutes ago. I don't know, but like, yeah, not to completely steal their names, Kyle, but I think Justin Rose is probably like the not named Tommy Fleetwood. Justin Rose is probably one of the best 35 and over players in the field. I can't pick Phil Mickelson. Like that would have been one where I really would have wanted to pick this year, just because he always somehow finds a way to play well at Augusta as well. But I'll settle for Justin Rose.
Yeah, Justin Rose is a good pick. You look at his Masters though. So back to 2019, cut. We'll skip 2020, seventh in 2021, cut in 22, T16 in 23, cut in 24, second last year. So you know what that means is happening this year.
Wow.
It's an odd
No.
year.
It's an
A
odd
win.
year. Yeah, I think he.
It's an even year, Nick, but yeah.
Okay, yeah. So as you guys kind of laid out, t slim pickings after those two. The
Oh,
guys, two guys I
yeah.
was wrestling between are the homie
Mm.
because I want to root for him, and Shane Lowry, who I have a soft spot for.
Ooh.
I don't
I
hate
don't
that
know
I
one.
think
if it was because of the cognizant, but he just hasn't really rebounded from that.
no.
Um, and Homa hasn't
Does
been
he
playing
have
well either lately.
yeah,
But
what has Lowry done at Augusta? Has he done he's got a T3 a couple years ago,
he's got
but
a
nothing
T3,
recent.
but T16, 43, 42 last year. I think I got to
Yeah.
go homie. He's played well here the last couple years. Um, Not much else to say other than that.
Yeah, I think I'm not surprised, I guess. I'm curious. I would have given a lot of consideration to Jason Day. I think that would be the
Yeah,
one name in there that I
Yeah,
was like,
I
I don't know.
mean,
I love Jason Day. I don't know if you guys saw the outfit he was rocking today. It was fire.
awesome.
I love the Malbin golf outfits that he's got prepped up. But T8 last year, coming off a T6 at the Texas Children's, obviously not good. Before that, T59 at the Players, cut at the Arnold Palmer, cut at the Genesis. Um, but like I don't know, his approach play
yeah,
hasn't been great. But I like Jason Day a lot. I mean, he's getting up there. He's uh no, he's only 38. Wow, he's younger than I thought. Because I remember watching him when he won that PGA, right? When it was like 21 under or something like that. That was what, like 2015? Who knows? Anyways, yeah, I think the other names on here, Jason Day, I wouldn't have picked either of these guys, but I'm curious about JJ Spawn and Gary Woodland just to see, and Brooks Koepka's on this
Yeah,
list. But JJ Spawn, I don't think I would have picked. I just don't think that that level of approach play can carry over to the Masters. And then Gary Woodland, I have no idea, honestly. He could show up and play really, really well, but that Texas Children's Houston Open win where he obviously ran away with it pretty comfortably. That's why we barely remember that Nikolai Højgaard was T2 there, is because he was T2 by a lot. T14 at the Valspar, won the Texas Children before that, missed the cut at the Players, missed the cut at the Cognizant. T64 at the WM, missed the cut at the Farmers, 72nd at the Amex, missed the cut at the Sony. Like it's like how much do I want to rely on that 2 week stretch to carry into Augusta National? Not a
yeah, I
lot.
don't know.
I will ask you guys what you're looking for out of Brooks this week. I think that's a name we haven't really said yet. He does fit this 35 and over category. He was never somebody I was going to pick, but he's like, if you were just to look at betting odds, like he's not that far down there. He's above Jordan Spieth. There's better odds to win this tournament than Jordan Spieth.
That's
Better odds than
crazy.
Patrick Reed. Better odds than Chris Gotterup. Better odds than Victor Hovland. He's right behind Robert McIntyre, Justin Rose, and Min Woo Lee.
I would have
That's
been
one
more.
where I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the top 15 on the weekend, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see him in like the 40s, 50s, or even cut.
I'd be more surprised to see him in the top 15 than I would to see him get cut.
For sure. I would have
Certainly.
been more inclined to think he'd do well because he had been playing kind of well
Yeah. He had
before
that
the
stretch of a
Houston
couple.
Open. And
Yeah.
then he just looked awful. And that kind of scared me off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
don't
don't know.
know. There's not a lot to talk about with Brooks Koepka. His comeback hasn't. Well, I guess it has been what we expected. He hasn't been that like number one guy that we saw before he left. And yeah, this is his first major since his comeback. We'll see if he could reclaim some of that major mojo. But yeah, I got nothing.
He hasn't been a huge threat, but he's played like a great front nine and then has a terrible back
Yeah.
nine or vice
Right.
versa. And just yeah, it just hasn't looked like the same guy since he's come back for sure.
All right,
Agreed.
Kyle, you gotta take us into the one more. This is anybody. Anybody you want who we haven't really talked about, who you wanna stamp, you wanna stake your
I-
claim on.
I'm shocked nobody took this guy. And what other category would he have been? I guess he would have been in the 25. No, what is he? Where
Is
where
he
does
just nowhere?
Bobby Mack?
He's nowhere.
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 He's I mean, I would have I was like thinking about picking him to win if it weren't for like last week just seeming super strenuous
Yeah.
and having to play 30 holes on Sunday and all that. But God, he's just good, man. I said it last week when I brought him up kind of late in our preview pod. He's just like been there this year, and him being a lefty also makes me think he'll do well here. So yeah, I'll take him. I'm glad to throw him in my cumulative score.
All
Yeah. That was
right.
part of the impetus for the one more is that there's so many guys that fell into that 25 to 35 and not a past champion, but
Right.
also not a first time. So I wanted to make sure we get to talk about a couple of these guys.
Yeah. I think, he's someone that has completely shattered Will's confidence in him after last week, but I
Oh,
gotta
thank
run
God.
with Ludwig Oberg. I
Okay.
think, he's someone that, maybe he's a serial choker, maybe he's not. We have yet to figure that out in 2026. But he's someone that he's played twice in the Masters, has yet to finish outside the top 10. He's one of both times he was one of those like, I think we said last time that every Masters has like those like two or three guys that are like two shots off the lead that are not taking the lead, but they're like still there at least.
He was a
And
side character in both in
yeah,
both
I
the
mean,
last two
exactly.
Masters.
if you're
So,
choking, that means you were in the lead at some point. So
right.
Yeah.
Hasn't choked a Masters yet. Maybe he can, kind of go from like side character to like main storyline. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. I definitely think he's the obviously look Valero, the players that is weighing on me a little bit, but the upside of Ludwig Oberg is too big to pass on.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good
And
pick.
speaking of upside in the players, Cam Young. I'm going Cam Young
I knew you were going to do
for
that.
my yeah, I had to. I'm glad you guys let me get one after you stole Nikolai Hoygaard out from under me. But no, it's got to be Cam Young. I think. Look, we saw him win the Players. We know he can do it in high leverage. I think we've seen him play well at the Masters. I forget what he was saying. I believe 2022. Oh no, I'm thinking of his Open at in 2022. I believe he was T3 at the Open in 2022. But at the Masters, he's done decently, I believe. Yeah, T9 in 2024, T7 in 2023. I think 2023 was that year where he was like top 10 in three of the major championships or something like that. Did miss the cut last year. But look, we're talking about a totally different guy right now. He's coming off his win at the Players, a T3 at the Arnold Palmer, a T7 at the Genesis. His approach play is one of the best. I think where you are lacking a little bit maybe is that around the green play, but I have no reason to believe that Cam Young won't uh, be around. Like he's another one of those guys where I'm pretty confident in the fact that he will manage himself to a top 20 or so. Knock on wood. I hope I'm not eating my words, but you guys know I love Cam Young. I'm glad you guys let me get either him or Nikolai. Maybe both in the same team would have been a little bit overpowered, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's not a bad pick whatsoever, Cam Young. I definitely like that one, and I was weighing that too, but I knew it'd break your heart. So
Yeah, I do appreciate that. Okay, I'm gonna read through who our teams ended up being, and then I think we're pushing a lot of time. We can look back at the guys we didn't talk about. There's a big list here, and we can see if there's anybody we really want to mention. But to run through the teams, my team, Will's team, Bryson DeChambeau, Casey Jarvis, Patrick Reed, Rasmus Højgaard, Tommy Fleetwood, and Cam Young. Nick's team, Matt Fitzpatrick, Chris Gotterup, Jordan Spieth, Nikolai Højgaard, Justin Rose and Ludwig Oberg, and then Kyle's team, Xander Schauffele, Jacob Bridgman, Adam Scott, Akshay Bhatia, Max Homa, and Bobby McIntyre. I think we've got a good battle on our hands here.
these are some good teams.
I know.
Yeah.
At first, I was going to say Kyle. I think the Xander Bridgman turn in
Yeah.
rounds
Oh
one and two
man.
there was huge.
That's
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 yeah,
unreal.
that's a good one.
Yeah, I'm not too psyched about a couple of mine, but I think we all got the short end of the stick once or twice, and we all got the benefit here once or twice. So I don't know. Looking through this, are there any guys that you guys want to give a shout? You know, long shots, middle of the road. We haven't talked much about Jake Knapp, um, Brooks Koepka. We talked about Minwoo. I want to talk about Minwoo Lee a little bit. Um, he has some decent Masters finishes, but I'm kind of throwing historical Minwoo Lee out the window a little bit, and I'm just looking at the guy that we've had recently. And you know, we've talked about this so many times at this point that he has graduated to be so much more than the golfer he was last year, the golfer he was in 2024. He's coming off a T3 at the Texas Children's. Did not play well at the Players, but like him not playing well as a T32, obviously almost made the playoff with Colin Morikawa at the AT&T Pebble Beach. Colin needed that birdie on the 72nd to separate. And then, you know, the Genesis and the Arnold Palmer T6 and T12. So that was reverse order T12 and T6. But um, I don't know. I don't know a ton of what to expect, but I also would certainly not be surprised. He's the flip side of Brooks to me. I'd be more surprised if he missed the cut than I would be if he was top 15. That's kind
Yeah,
of where I stand.
I could definitely see that as well.
Who else have we not talked about? We've talked about a lot of folk, a lot of gentlemen.
Yeah,
Jacob Bridgman got a shout.
uh, yeah, I'm just going off like the data golf projections to win. I feel like everybody is either like on like and looking at the top 20. I feel like everybody's kind of on our team. Ooh, Patrick Cantlay.
No,
Yeah,
I mean,
just straight up.
I think he. I gotta look at his results. Is he done T7 coming off a T7 at the Valspar? You know, I was gonna say he's falling a little bit into that Ben Griffin camp where I know he's a really good golfer, but just hasn't done it this year. But he's got some good finishes this year. T13, T14, T7 all this year. Um, Look, he at the Masters, what has he done? T9 in 2019, nothing better than T14 in the last 3 years, T36 last year. Look, it easily could be randomly up there. He has gone by the wayside in terms of my the guys that are front of mind for me this year. I feel like
Yeah,
maybe that's personal bias or something, but I have it's a fair shout because he is one of those guys. I mean, he's up there in the best careers, best players to not have won a major right at this point. It's got to
yeah,
be
I'd say.
of active players. So never know. Maybe he'll knock one out this year.
Guess we'll just have to tune in on Thursday.
Yeah. The only other guy I do want to shout, just because I like throwing lots of names out there, and I talked about him on Sunday, and this is the Sunday pod was kind of the process of how I fell in love with Casey Jarvis, and I wanted to also give a shout out to the only other like AM and or open winner that's coming in really hot, and that's Ethan Fang. Really like not going to do it. It just like if you want to watch an amateur, watch one of these guys like that might do. They're all great. FIFA Pact, he's another great name. Obviously, the USAM guys, Mason Howell and Jackson Harrington are great names, but I was really impressed with Ethan Fang. 20 years old, he's a junior at Oklahoma State. He's one of those guys that has just been successful like at every stop pretty much throughout his career. He's a junior now, but 4 top 10 finishes his freshman year, 9 top 10 finishes his sophomore year, and thus far in his junior year, 4 top 10 finishes and his first 2 collegiate wins. He is coming off a win at the Merritt Collegiate just 2 weeks prior to the Masters. Does that mean a lot? No,
No,
but
be careful with those amateurs at the Masters because you'll watch one fall in love and then pick them on your fantasy team and it'll absolutely screw you over.
I thought you were going to say he'll go piss and raise Creek. I was like, my God,
No,
who could?
Shipley was the 24 low end,
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's
that's
kind
right.
of the only reason why
Oh,
I
that's
just
when that
remember watching
whole
him, and that's why I picked him this year. And the guy hasn't made a freaking cut.
the meme of him and Tiger, like Tiger giving him some secrets and Neil Shipley
Yeah,
not being allowed to say what they were or whatever. That all came out. That was
like
fun.
the
I
last
thought you were
player to
going
ever
the
play at Augusta
Jose.
with Tiger.
Yeah,
yeah.
I thought you were going down the Jose Luis Ballesteros, or not Ballesteros, Ballester, pissing in Rays
No,
Creek.
no,
But
I'm
The
more
tool.
self-centered than that. It's
but I,
about
I do
how he
think,
affected me.
yeah. Look, I think the AMs are fun. Like, do I expect anything from any of these guys? No, not really. But like, just having some familiarity with them is going to be fun for me to like now look through. And if Ethan Fang does well, I can be like, hey guys, look, I told you. That's kind of why I put
Exactly.
my stamp on Ethan Fang and Casey Jarvis because if if they're up there, man, I'm gonna look so smart. The TikTok video is gonna get thousands. It's gonna go crazy on socials if I'm right.
Nobody casts a wide net like Will does.
No, that's how you
Never.
got. That's how you win, man. That's how you win. Says the guy who hasn't picked one right yet this year. This is the week. This is the week. Every week's the week.
One of those guys. One of those guys, Will.
Yeah, I think we
Okay,
did
man.
it.
Any final thing? Any weird bets we like? Anything
There's a couple more
funky?
guys I want to talk about. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I was gonna say,
I'm getting hungry, man. Like,
we've literally ran through the
No,
whole
I'm done.
field.
I'm done. I promise. I'm done.
Okay, so we are going to do a Friday episode, post round on Friday to kind of see what happened, where we lie, what the cut had ended up being, if Nick was right about Rory missing the cut prediction. So we're going to come at you with that one, and then of course we will follow everything over the weekend, and we'll be posting stuff to all our social media on Twitter at Center Cup Pod, on Instagram and TikTok at centercup.pod. It doesn't get any better than this. The anticipation
absolutely
is
No,
not.
killing me.
I know.
There is no sleep to be had the next 2 days until that first uh, tee goes off. What else is there to say?
Absolutely
Nothing.
nothing. A tradition unlike any other.
No. Yeah, I'm excited to. I'm hoping that maybe I can find a way to join you guys on Friday night, but it's going to be tough. We're working through some logistics overseas, but I am super excited to be watching the final groups coming down at like 6 p.m. In my hotel room. So that's gonna rock.
Yeah,
Hell
that will
yeah.
be nice. If Will picks a winner, he's gonna now have to fly back to Paris every year for the Masters to watch.
Yeah, no
Exactly.
choice. Yeah, no choice, unfortunately. But there are
Okay.
worse things.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Easily. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We really appreciate it. This was such a fun episode, and we cannot wait to be with you on Friday recapping what happened. It's Masters Week, baby.
It
Hello,
is.
friends, and goodbye.
Goodbye, friends.